once again, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Because I think you already just attended, isn't it? Okay. I'm
Okay.
sharing the slides once again and going up and presenting once again. As I said to you, today I'm going to present the risk and the term structure of the interest rates. Let me check if the presentation is maintained. I think is maintained, but I have to stop this and present again, or you will then watch only the presentation where the voice starts. Okay. Anyway, is it okay for you, Annie? Annie, do you hear me?
I think.
Okay. Do you see the slides?
No, I
You
don't.
don't see. Yeah, I will do it. What about now?
No, I don't see.
Still not seeing. It will come, I think. You don't see, still not seeing.
Now I see.
Okay, good. I'm going to present you the risk term structure of interest rates today. This will be more theoretical, so I hope you will follow up, okay? And the Said is not able to attend, I think, and the other students, I don't know, still not attending to the class. We will see what will happen. Okay, in this chapter, we are examining the sources and the causes of the fluctuations in interest rates relative to one another, and look at a number of theories that explain the expectation theories, so-called the habitat theories, and we are going to explain these fluctuations, the reasons of these fluctuations. The learning objectives identify and explain three factors explaining the risk structures of interest rates, and we will list and explain the three theories, as I mentioned to you, the expectations theory, the habitats, of why interest rates vary across maturities. And bonds with the same maturity have different interest rates due to default risk, liquidity, tax considerations. It goes like this. Here it is given the corporate bonds for the United States, and as you are observing here, the Board of Governors, and which is somehow the little bit higher, and the corporate bonds becomes the mostly the upper annual yields, and mostly the state and local governments, so-called the municipality bonds, becoming always lower level, and the corporate bonds becoming in the mid, where it is the A level is suggested, which is reliable. And when we are looking to this graph, we are understanding the local and state governments, so-called the municipality bonds, are becoming always lower yields, and this is somehow because they are offered for collecting some, capital for being able to make some, let's say, investment and entrepreneurship for the governmental level and local governmental level, of course. And this is not intended to yield or offer much interest rate, because these are also tax exempted for supporting and offering some capital to the state and local governments. And the other corporate bonds are becoming more reliable, as you see. And the BAA level bonds, corporate bonds, are becoming always probably the highest yields, and the maturity dates offers better payments. The risk structure of interest rates, the default risk probability that the issuer of the bonds is unable or unwilling to make interest payments or pay off the face value, and the US Treasury bonds are considered default free. Government can raise the taxes, and risk premium, the split between the interest rates on bonds with default risk and the interest rates on same maturity treasury bonds. You know what is treasury bonds, and the given terminology. I think you know because we have exercised before also, and you know probably from the former lectures. Bonds are offered for 1 year's period. It is usually offered for collecting some capital for realizing some investments, and this is done usually from the banking sector or some other institutions such as municipalities, and it is largely used method for collecting some capital to the economy or to the financial sector, and mostly used from the banking sector for being able to invest and create some entrepreneurship. Here the risk on corporate bonds is represented, where the US Treasury bonds on the right side and US corporate bonds represented on the left side. And as you see, an increase in default risk shifted demand curve for corporate bonds to the left, which means risk factor is somehow shifting the price level lower, and results of this, the demand is also shifted from D1 to D2 for the corporate bonds, and this is somehow a reduction. And on the right side, the treasury bonds, not corporate, this shifts the demand curve, results of this evaluation or appreciation, and price will become higher, and this will then shift the demand from D1 to D2. This is for the treasury bonds. And this raises the price of this at the end, rising the prices, rises the the price of the treasury bonds and lowering the price of the corporate bonds, having some effects. When the price is going down, it is expected that the interest rate going up, and when the price is going up, the interest rate is going down. This is somehow inverse relationship between the price of the bonds and the interest rate, and this then shows how it is affecting and changing and managing the financial system in this direction. And here are the ratings given by the Moody's, Standard Poor, and the Fitch. You know, these are the evaluation companies. Standard Poor, Moody's, and Fitch are usually evaluating countries and the institutions for their performance. And if it is AAA for the all, the premium maximum safety is illustrated. If it is decreed to AA1, AA2, it is reducing the degree of this evaluation and appreciation. And when it comes to A1, A2, A3, it will reduce. And as you see, Moody's used A1, A2, A3 rating, and Standard Poor use A plus, A minus, as we are using for the gradings students' success. And Fitch also use A plus, A minus, or AB, BC, or CB, or DC, or DD that we are using also. They are having also such grading or rating system, and this will then give some information about the performance of the countries, their economies, and their success, or sometimes the institutions will be then evaluated as it is illustrated here. If it is in the lower medium grade, then it will be then for the Moody's Baa1. For the ratings, Standard Poor, it is BBB plus. Similarly for the Fitch, and when it goes like this, then Baa2, Baa3, it is reducing its level, and then will comes to Ba1 for the Moody's, for the Standard Poor BB plus, and for the Fitch is again similar evaluation will be given. And the Moody's again Ba2, Ba3. It goes like this for speculative application or evaluations. And for the Standard Poor and Fitch, it will become then BB minus, BB minus or B plus, BB minus. It goes and reduce the speculation, which is highly speculative indicated when we are coming to the B level. And when it is coming to the C level, whereas the CAA1 or CAA2 is then indication of this substantial risk or poor standing, which is not good for investing. The global financial crisis and the BAA Treasury split, starting in August 2007, the Lehman Brothers, as you know from your former lectures, we had a serious financial crisis in 2008, 2007, where the Lehman Brothers had some problem with this mortgage, where there was a very serious um, problem, and the financial reliability of these institutions becomes lower, and this then caused too much to the economy, and this mortgage market led to a very huge amount of loose and cause too much problem to the economies, and results of this some bailout programs started. As a consequence, many investors began to doubt the financial health of the corporations with low credit ratings such as BAA, and even the reliability of the ratings themselves is going to be questioned, and the perceived increase in default risk for BAA bonds made them less desirable at any given prices where it is probably the highest profit or highest payments is promised, but nobody trusted anymore this kind of investment. And risk structure of the interest rate, the liquidity, the relative lease with each which an asset can be converted into cash. The cost of selling bond is becoming important, and number of buyers sellers in a bond market is also questionable. Income tax consideration is also important. Interest payments on municipality bonds are exempted, as you know, as I mentioned to you, from this kind of applications, and federal income tax are not used for the municipality bonds. Unfortunately, this is then somehow is supporting hand to the municipalities, but on the other side, when they are offering these bonds with lower yields and lower interest rates, it is also not very well demanded, as shown in the former graphic. The figure shows the interest rate on municipality and treasury bonds again. As you see, the tax-free status shift the demand for municipality bonds to the right in the first phase. But when it comes to the second, for the treasury bonds, this will then shift the price down, and the demand for the treasury bonds go down also. With the results, the municipal bonds end up with the larger, higher prices and lower interest rate, as I mentioned to you, and lower interest rate than the treasury bonds, which is shown on the graph. Because of this, is then municipality becomes not too much desired. Effects of the tax increase on bond interest rates. In 2013, the US Congress approved legislation favored by the Obama administration to increase the income tax rate on high income taxes from 35 to 39, and consistent with the supply and demand analysis, the increase in income tax rates for wealthy people helped to lower the interest rate on municipality bonds relative to the interest rate on treasury bonds. The bonds with identical risk, liquidity, and tax characteristics may have different interest rates because the time remaining to maturity is different. And as it is illustrated here, the movements over time and the interest rate, the US government bonds with different maturities is illustrated. And as you see, the larger so-called the 20 years, the long run or long period of time bonds becomes very preferable after 80s, and the short-term bonds, as you see, always yield very low, let's say, interest and yield, And this is then the reason the 3 months, so-called the very short term bonds are not very well preferred, and it is always lower than the other long term and medium term investments, which is indicated with the blue one. The term structure of the interest rate yield curves, a plot of the yield on bonds with differing terms to maturity but the same risk, liquidity, and tax considerations. It will be then upward sloping. Long-term rates are above the short-term rates, and flat short and long-term rates are the same, and inverted long-term rates are below short-term rates. The term structure of interest rates. The theory of the term structure of interest rates must explain the following facts. The interest rates on bonds of different maturities move together over time. When short-term interest rates are low, yield curves are more likely to have an upward slope, and when short-term rates are high, yield curves are more likely to slope down and be inverted, and yield curves almost always slope outward. We have the three theories, as I mentioned, to explain the three facts about the term structure of the interest rates: the expectation theory, segmented market theory, and liquidity premium theory. Expectations theory explains the first two facts, but not the third. The segmented markets theory explains the third fact, but not the first two. And liquidity premium theory combines the two theories to explain all the facts. Let's look at the first one. The expectation theory, the interest rate on long-term bond will equal on average of the short-term interest rates that people expect to occur over the life of the long-term bonds. Buyers of bonds do not prefer bonds of one maturity over another. They will not hold any quantity of bond if its expected return is less than that of another bond with a different maturity. And bondholders consider bonds with different maturities to be perfect substitutes. An example, let's the current rate on 1-year bond be 6. You expect the interest rate on 1-year bond to be 8 next year. Then the expected return will be the half of this, which is 7. And the interest rate of these two, of course, will be then 7. When you're going to divide 6 plus 2 to 2, then will gives you then 7%, which is then average. And the interest rate on 2 years bond must be 7 for 2 be willing to purchase it. For investment as $1, the interest rate on one period bond is given, and the IT plus 1 will be the next period, and I2 there will be then second period of this interest is illustrated below graph as you are observing, started from 0, goes to the first year and the second year, and the total interest will be then IT plus 1 will be divided 2, will then gives you the expected interest. And expected return over the 2 periods for investing $1 in the 2 periods bond and holding it for 2 periods will be then 1 plus I2 multiplied with 1 plus I2 minus 1. When you're going to multiply this and open the bracket, will be then 1 plus 2. This is then simplest mathematical calculation and algebra which we are using. 1 power of 2 is also here, but 1 power of 2 is also 1 plus 2 power of 2 multiplied with I in the 2 period plus I again in the 2 period will be the power of 2 subtracted from minus 1. And when you're gonna simplify this, then this will then 2I 2t plus I 2t in bracket power of 2. Since I 2t power of 2 is very small, the expected return for holding the 2 periods bonds for 2 periods is 2I 2t. If 2 1-period bonds are bought with one investment, $1 investment, as I mentioned to you, 1 plus I in bracket 1 plus I t plus 1 in bracket again, when it is going to be multiplied together, this will then give you minus 1, of course. This will then gives you 1 plus IT plus I. E is the expectation of the interest, expected interest, so-called 1 t plus 1 plus IT in bracket I expected interest t plus 1, which is the t plus 1 means the next period, minus 1, it plus I expectation theory, and expected interest is again here, t plus 1 plus it current period and it plus 1 the next period, the expected period, will then gives you the it plus I expected interest, so-called, is extremely small. Simplifying, we get it plus I expected interest is together will gives you the total amount of the interest, and the bonds which will be held on if the expected returns are equal, then will be then 2it I2t is equal to it plus it plus 1, which, as I mentioned to you, it is the current period and it plus 1 is the next period. The expected interest rate will then gives you it. When you're going to divide the both sides of this equation to 2, this will then gives you the second period of the interest will gives you the it plus t plus 1, the expected interest, will be divided to 2. Then the 2 period rate must equal the average of the 2 1 period rates for bonds with longer maturities, which is I and T. These are the N is the period, N is the number of periods, and T is the time that it goes. E T plus E T plus 1, E T plus 2, and it goes like this, and E T plus N minus 1. The N period interest rate equals the average of the 1 period interest rate expected to occur over the N period life of the bond. The expectation theory explains why the term structure of interest rate changes at different times, why the interest rate on bonds with different maturities move together over time, which is the fact 1, and why yield curves tend to slope up when short-term rates are low and slope down when short-term rates are high. If you have any question, please ask me any, and cannot explain why yield curves usually slope upward. This is then the fact 3. The bond of different maturities are not substitutes at all. The interest rate for each bond with a different maturity is determined by the demand for and supply of the bond, and investors have preferences for bonds of one maturity over another. If investors generally prefer bonds with shorter maturities that have less interest rate risk, then this explains why yield curves usually slope upward. The interest rate on a long-term bond will equal an average of the short-term interest rates expected to occur over the life of the long-term bond, plus a liquidity premium that responds to supply and demand conditions for the bond. Bonds of different maturities are partial, not perfectly substitutes. And the liquidity premium theory will be then represented as I and T is equal to IT plus 1 is the period of the expectation of the interest, will goes to N minus 1 divided to N plus the liquidity NT. Whereas the liquidity NT is the liquidity premium for the M period and the T time, which is always positive and rise with the time of the maturity. And the preferred habitat theory, investors have a preferences for bonds of one maturity over another. They will be willing to buy bonds of different maturity only if they earn a somewhat higher expected returns, and investors are likely to prefer short-term bonds over long-term periods. And here the relationship between the liquidity premium, preferred habitat, and expectation is represented on the graph. The interest rate is on the y-axis, and the yields, the maturity and period, is represented on the x-axis. The expectation theory is becoming a little bit up because, as I mentioned to you, there is some risk factor and it is becoming upper, and the liquidity premium, which is the preferred habitat theory, is represented with this pink area, so-called the liquidity premium, which is the yield curve, which is touching to the yield curve and represent the amount of the liquidity premium, which is going to be expected in the certain period of time. Here is probably 30 years. The liquidity premium and preferred habitat theories, interest rate on different maturity bonds move together over time and explained by the first term in the equation, and yield curves tend to slope upward, when short-term rates are low, and to be inverted when short-term rates are high. explained by the liquidity premium term in the first class and by a low expected average in the second case. Yield curves typically sloped upward, explained by the larger liquidity premium as the term to the maturity length. Here are the yield curves and the market expectation of the short-term interest rates according to the liquidity premium is represented. The first one is the steeply upward sloping yield curve, which is a little bit higher, is going to be somehow parallel and proportional to the yield of the maturity and the terms of the maturity. And the mildly upward, which is a little bit more so-called flatter, and it becomes somehow parallel, a little bit somehow parallel to the term of the maturity, and the yield of the maturity is becoming a little bit lesser by time goes. As the time goes, you see the yield to maturity and the maturity date expected, let's say, interest is lesser comparing to the graph A. And on the C, flat yield curve is given where no yield is expected. On the flat D, it's downward sloping and there is a negative slope and negative expectation from this maturity and from this expected returns and interest. Do you have any question, please? Oh, Kevin, you are on. How nice.
Yes,
You are sometimes joining us. Why you are joining sometimes? Why you not attending regularly?
I'm working, so I'm so sorry for that.
But if you want to pass this course, you have to attend the class and you have to do your necessary exams for passing this, because next week I will give you one assignment and you will do this, you know, so you have to follow up because we are approaching to the final.
Yeah.
And you need, I think, this assignment for your success. Okay, I'm going to present the last part of this presentation and finish the class. And the yield curve for the US government bonds is represented again here. As you see, as much as you are observing, the 2007 is offering somehow a little bit 2% something, and after the upper, when you go, it is somehow the interest rate when it is increased, it is becoming a little bit lesser. And as you see, as much as the interest rate is upper, the expected maturity years and the return is changing and decreasing. Therefore, it is better to have some reliable and reasonable interest rate for reasonable return from reliable companies, not the firms who are preferring and offering you very high or promising you a very high interest and very high yield in the maturity date. Therefore, these things are becoming eligible when you are going to invest to the institutions or to the banking sector or to the financial sector. You have to check the history of this institution, how they are performing, whether they are doing good or not, how they are paying their customers, their people, their savers who are investing their institution. And these things are then reduce your risk factor. And whether they are reliable or not, you can also check this Fitch and Standard Poor reports. These are the important hints for the people who are investing to those institutions, because there are too many fake institutions. They are collecting the money and disappeared and then bankrupt, and the bailout programs then is in the agenda. Lehman Brothers, one of the most popular in 2007, as I mentioned to you. This was the last page, I think. We have already presented this for today. Last week we have done the Keynesian model. You were on, I think, N. And if you have any problem with this, you may ask me. If not, then next week I will upload one assignment, which will be 20% to 30% will be contributed to your final exam if you are doing good. If you not, then minimum 10% will be then given to you if you are submitting this assignment, just only for bonus to you. So this is good to know. I will upload next week the assignment, and you will have some due time for this project. If you don't have any question, then see you then next week. Next week we have another presentation regarding to your program. If you have any question, you can contact me via email or via WhatsApp. I don't know if I have given to you my WhatsApp, my mobile. You can contact me, write me, then I will respond you as much as possible I can. If you don't have any question, thank you for your joining. Then next week we will see the next presentation. Okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.